T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome, everyone, to the Midheaven Podcast. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thank you for joining us. My name is Candice Marie. This is my partner in crime, Mr. Godiva, a.k.a.
Chocolate Smooth, the Venusian, since, apparently I'm a Taurus, and I just didn't know.
Oh my gosh, this whole podcast has me heated.
Yes.
I stepped away from this conversation for a very long time because I felt like a crazy person because so many people brought this up in like 2019 and 2020 that I was ready to pull my hair out. So it's taken me 2 years to even be ready to talk about this.
And what you'll find out is that this is a subject that is purposefully recycled every few years just to spread disinformation by people who don't have any experience reading charts, cookbook astrologers who give you this placebo astrology, because every defense towards this I've ever heard is, it feels right. But I've never heard any critical, proof. All right, so this is going to be an educational episode. So shout out to astro.com.
More like a fucking fact-checking episode.
Shout out to Astrodienst, who is just remaining the GOAT of the astrology information out there, because they don't play. Why is news of a 13th zodiac sign like an urban myth that keeps circulating even though it's not true? So apparently people have issues differentiating between constellations and zodiac signs. So let's just speak about the greatest zodiac sign that has never existed ever in life. Sagittarius. Ophiuchus.
You're gonna get murked for saying that.
Right, straight up. Not my favorite. My favorites are Libra and Sag. But the first or third decan of Sagittarius, which is technically the third decan of Sagittarius, which is Ophiuchus.
So this is what's crazy, because there's so much mismatched information that I have found on this. And, okay, just to clear up any misconceptions. Okay,
we will sort articles that we use on this in the video. Please read them.
Ophiuchus?
Ophiuchus, I love that. Oh, fuck this. Ophiuchus.
Ophiuchus?
Yeah, Ophiuchus.
Oh, fuck this.
Oh, fuck
this. Whatever, we already have a censor. It's already full disclosure. We say fuck on this podcast a bit.
And shit and bitch.
Yeah, well, yeah. We just don't use the C word, because that's...
critical.
Critical thinking.
Yes.
Okay. Ophiuchus.
Just to nip this in the bud. People who believe in Ophiuchus cannot tell you about the Earth's celestial equator and the sun's ecliptic path. This is facts. Anyone who believes in a 13th zodiac sign doesn't know how astrology really works.
So here's what's interesting, though, is that, just so you guys know, just because NASA says that they're recognizing this particular constellation does not automatically open up the theme of astrology and factoring in another sign.
You have to understand that NASA, speaking about a 13th sign, NASA, speaking
Come
about...
on, you're from Florida now.
NASA speaking about a 13th sign is like me, as an astrologer, speaking about, abortion. That's a little extreme, but a
lot of astrologers are talking about that right now, but...
No, but it's like me talking about veganism, or I'm not gonna say that. It's like me talking about, the astrology of mechanics, but I'm not a mechanic. I've never once in my life worked on a car. So what the fuck do I know about mechanics? Okay, that's all I'm about to say.
Here's the thing: astrologers can, and I know astrologers that do work very much so with astronomy, especially because, surprise, there are 13 constellations. Okay, that does not mean
there might even be more than 13.
Well, main ones that we work with,
right.
If you look at the constellation of whatever the fuck it's called, I'm not even gonna say it anymore because I can't even pronounce it.
Yeah.
It's from the end of November into, it takes up most of Sag. So this particular constellation is coming off of the late degrees of Scorpio, and it's moving, and it takes up so much of Sagittarius. So technically this sign is going to be not a Scorpio, but not quite a Sag.
Right.
And just full disclosure also, we practice Western astrology. We practice tropical astrology. So if you're looking at sidereal, if you're looking at Vedic, that's not what we're talking about, because there are practices of astrology that do recognize and acknowledge the fact that constellations and particular degrees of signs have moved. That's why if you look into your Vedic astrology, you're going to find that your rising sign and your sun sign and your moon sign are generally all going to be very different, and they're all going to be about a sign behind.
23 degrees of delineation to be exact. And just to clear that up, Vedic astrology is legit. Sidereal astrology is not for Western calculation. So Vedic astrology is based on the sidereal system. But if you're smart, you'll use Vedic and nakshatras for Western calculations.
That's what I do.
Right, that's what the smart people do.
And that's why you can see that there can be some Western astrologers that can be kind of making a lot of the same predictions that you would hear for Vedic, as long as they're taking into consideration that there have been these shifts and you understand the decans and all that stuff.
All of that. And what's also important is that, you know, relative to this and the culture around it, we need to shout out to the Chaldeans, we need to shout out to the Babylonians, Ptolemy in the area that innovated astrology, which around that period noticed the precession of the equinoxes. The purpose of Western astrology was to rectify the disinformation and, of course, the misunderstanding of basing the zodiac off constellations versus the imaginary zodiacal space. A lot of people don't know that the zodiac is an imaginary axis that is calculated through the mathematical position of the sun and the Earth's equator. And so this is so very important. When anyone tells you that there's 13 signs, you need to instantly ask them, what is the significance between the intersection between the equator and the ecliptic? If they can't tell you, if they cannot tell you how that actually makes transits accurate through mathematical angles, they don't know astrology. They just know planets and signs, and they're giving you bullshit. These are the people who say, well, it feels like my sidereal is right. No, in fact, I don't care about your fucking feelings. Okay, this is about math. Astrology is not a spiritual practice. It is a science.
And also, and a lot of people have said, I've heard a lot of people argue about astrology, whether it's like fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson or...
Which I want to speak on him. He does not believe in astrology, but, and I want to take his masterclass, what he points out about astrology that is fact is the bias that is inherent in astrology. And there's so much bias because there's so much misunderstanding about astrology that it is rampant. What he doesn't understand is that doesn't necessarily dismiss astrology as a legit science, but you know, there's so much misinformation out there.
Bill Nye and everybody else. I mean, there's been a number of people who have basically tried to debunk it, and I think that they're coming from the angle of talking about astronomy, which is understandable, but astrology is a closed system. The same way tarot, I Ching, everything else, if you understand the like divinatory practice and the understanding and the archetypes of it, it doesn't matter if you're learning how to like, you know, practice fortune telling with a deck of cards or checkers or crystals. If you understand and if you can read the signs and the symbols and the omens and you can relate them within that closed system, anything is possible. That's why you can see, whether it's a Babylonian astrologer, a Hellenistic astrologer, a Vedic, that there are people, when they know what they're doing and they can read the system, they can predict. This
is why when the Capitol riots happened, when Mars entered Taurus, it was exact based on Western, because Astrolata, shout out to you, I feel like it was one of the most genius representatives of expressing the purpose of sidereal, because sidereal is useful when you're calculating the astrology of an age of people.
Yeah.
Like moving out of the age of Pisces, outside the Earth's equator. When you're inside the Earth's equator, you're governed by seasons. Scientists have proven that seasons affect human temperament. That's astrology, baby. Okay, that's the delineation of the signs within the seasons. What makes astrology accurate isn't the planets' effect on people. When people say that the planets don't affect you, those people have never read a natal chart. They don't know what the fuck they're saying. It's not that. It's the angles. It's the language between the moon and the sun and Venus, that as above, so below, give us an idea of what is happening. So in order to disassociate between the subjective interpretation versus the objective calculation of the planets, astrology is a science objectively. Natal chart interpretation is subjective as an art, and it's all a language. So you're going to really come into a greater understanding of why astrology is accurate, why Western astrology is actually, what to do. Because like you hear people say that, oh, both work. No, that's not true. One is placebo astrology, the other is actual science.
You're not seeing a lot of mainstream. I have yet to see a mainstream astrologer be like, here's the horoscope for this sign, right? And so what's interesting, just kind of scanning through some of these like links, talking about, okay, it's moving everything around. According to Babylonians, ancient stories, there was 13 constellations. We know this. NASA has walked this back, though. I've seen other things where, like, they came out and they said, oh, we're recognizing this constellation, but they've walked it back and not wanting to interfere with, like, modern astrology.
Right.
Because everybody fucking lost their shit. I lost my shit, and then I was, like, over it in a week because I was like, I'm not going to acknowledge this. Here's a couple of fun facts, okay? So similar to, like, Vedic, if you were to go and look at your Western astrology and then you look at Vedic, obviously it shifts everything. Like, for me, I'm a Libra rising in Western and a Scorpio sun. But look at my Vedic, I'm a Virgo rising and I have a bunch of planets in Libra. Don't really resonate with that, but when I listen to a lot of, like, my Vedic stuff, it resonates and it paints the same picture as Scorpio because it is the same energy. It's just under a different system.
And also because why a lot of it is resonant is most of you who have the sidereal behind, you have natal placements there.
Yeah.
So she has a Libra rising. As a Scorpio sun, Libra will be accurate because she's a Libra rising.
Yeah, so not everybody's going to have that. But
Right.
I feel like a lot of people are already, who are into astrology, are used to going back and forth and listening to both and hopefully taking what you like and kind of leaving the rest. So in that sense, like, it shouldn't bother a lot of people.
If you're smart and you're not fucking stupid. Because you have to understand the essence of astrology. And a lot of people don't.
You also have to understand that in order to factor in another sign, there needed to be a new division for the other 12 signs. So it inherently changes everything. Just looking at the new dates, Capricorn, may now be more so associated with, like, Aquarius energy. Like, the timelines are all going to move, but here's the problem that I have, okay? And I hope you see where I'm going with this. Everything got moved forward about 3 weeks, right? Notice how, like...
23 degrees.
Yeah, so everything got moved forward about roughly 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yep.
But if you look at Scorpio starts November 23rd and it goes to November 29th.
It's so short.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got 6 days of Scorpio.
Exactly.
Which is fucked.
It's stupid.
Many of you would want that. Many of you would want
it's
that.
It's not even 360. And
yeah, it's not fair.
And the thing that's important about this is there's so much speculation. So you'll hear stuff about, oh, they decided to leave out a 13th sign. There's no documented proof of this.
Yeah.
Ask anyone to prove it. They can't tell you. It's because it's made up.
Well, this particular constellation, because it's at the tail end of Scorpio and it takes up more than, I think, half of the Sagittarius constellation, made me start thinking. I was thinking about this today when I was, like, reading through all of this stuff and kind of doing a refresher. When you look at the archetype of Scorpio, Scorpio has, like, the different levels, where first it starts kind of like with the lowest octave, which can be like that scorpion energy. The second, which can be more associated with, like, a snake shedding its skin or an eagle, and then finally the phoenix. So, there's a distinct difference between Scorpio and Sag. I feel Scorpio's
night
like
and day. It's
going
night
through
and day.
hell, and Sag is like, here's what I've learned, and now I'm moving forward with this information, and I'm changing things up, and I'm ascending. Mm-hmm. So to put this 13th sign in between Scorpio and Sag literally sounds like a demon child. Like an infusion of Scorpio and Sag energy, which I feel like is so different and probably should never be mixed.
Ever.
And you hear all this, like, stuff like, oh, it's sexier than Scorpio, it's more adventurous than Sag, but the element connected with this is the ethers. And it has a specific conjunction to the galactic center, which is about, let's call it, what it is. It's a black hole, basically.
Right.
And it's that connection to everything that is the center of our universe. So information and knowledge can come through it, but it's all consuming. So people who have jumped on the bandwagon for this have been like, oh, I resonate with this. It's a hard placement to have, but I'm a master healer and I didn't resonate with Scorpio and I don't resonate with Sag.
But ask them to prove it. I just feel it. I resonate with it. It's my intuition. Shut the fuck up. This is
It just feels like it's biting off of like the last decan of Scorpio going into Sag and about that elevation and like climbing out of the depths of hell. That's what it sounds like to me.
I will accept Ophiuchus as a decan. You can look at Ophiuchus as a decan of these signs, but there's a wisdom to it too, because if you look at the chart, so like if you look at the 3D realm, you have the 12 signs, but if you look at a proper Ophiuchus chart, it goes from Aries, and then once we get to Scorpio, it starts to spiral up.
Yeah.
And that's actually real. Ophiuchus is the ascension into past 3D, but we're not in 5D. So like, fuck a 13 sign. Like, it doesn't really apply that way. And a lot of the rhetoric around it is lies. Like, you ask people to bring you proof, they can't. The whole notion that they decided to leave 13 out, that's speculation. That's not proof. The whole notion that, oh, people just decided to take it out so it'd be 360 even, that's not true. That's speculation.
Well, it's so interesting that it has an association because it symbolizes a man with a snake.
Right.
So it has connections to like
Scorpio.
to serpents and healing and medicine and mysticism and like that kind of like vortex energy.
Vortex,
of like, transformational, like whatever. I feel like it's bullshit. Like, who the fuck's gonna take the trash out if you have 6 days of Scorpio?
Seriously?
See, like, everybody wants to talk shit about Scorpio, but the second it were to be a situation where all of those, like, really proud November Sages are suddenly Scorpios, I don't feel like that resonates.
But, like, it still doesn't change. It's so intellectually dishonest because there's no, like... It's still very important to understand the reason why this myth is true is because people don't understand the difference between constellations and signs. A lot of this is based off of the constellations, but constellations are not zodiac signs. Constellations were named after zodiac signs.
And that has a connection to archetype and myth and historical stuff. I mean, when you really think about it, if you've seen I think it's, what is it, like Zeitgeist? Have you seen that? Where they talk about like how essentially...
Which was riddled with a lot of like lies, but the message behind it there was some truth into it.
Well, the whole thing where they were talking about how everything came from Egyptian culture.
Right.
And was essentially stolen, like organized religion stole a lot of this stuff.
That is a fact.
And then made up their own kind of storyline, created their own lore, their Bibles, their this and their that. I mean... Not to sound like ignorant, but if you really look at like some of the storylines that come from Egypt, the Bible, right? Like you see like the story of like
Osiris, Horus,
exactly,
Isis,
and how that's basically telling the story of Jesus and like Mary and
Jesus
all that
came
stuff.
from Osiris and another like deity.
It just it makes me kind of feel like, especially if you look at the archetypes and like talking about like the Lamb of God and how that has so many connections and connotations to like a son being born, a child of God, Aries, like that new season. And then also when you think about the Bible and how they talk about how like they went and actually used wise men who had herbs and practiced astrology and followed the North Star to be able to find that a child was born. Like, that's all fucking Egyptian culture. That's literally what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And even before the Egyptians, the Dogons are able to, like... Then that's why I appreciate... So, like, before the innovation of astrology that created natal charts, our ancient ancestors didn't cast natal charts. They were able to just follow the lunar cycle. It is a fact that they're 13 28-day lunar cycles.
Yeah.
But people mistake that to mean that they're 13 signs, and it's not true at all. So the science behind why there are 12 zodiac signs is that the sun intersects with the Earth's equator, and it creates the Tropic of Capricorn and Cancer. We're going to source 2 astro.com articles that you'll be able to read this because they go into depth about this. And astro.com, thank you. But like the intersection creates the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. That creates our seasons. This now, the reason why Aries season is Aries is not because of the constellation. It's because it's equal day and equal night in the northern hemisphere.
Well, also, it's just
That's
the
what makes it
360 degrees. You got to
Right.
divide that by 12 in order to get that 30 degrees.
And there are delineations, right? The actual 365, there's 360 degrees, but the actual year is about 365 point whatever. And so there are adjustments that are made, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the zodiac is imaginary space, that the language between the planets that go through there create the context for what we experience down here. And it's only through this, and that's what makes astrology a science.
Oh, wow, Koch, he wrote this?
Like the Koch system?
Yeah, he was the one who did this
Dieter
article.
Koch,
Yeah.
God bless you, brother. Thank you for being a bright scientific mind in this ignorant world where people believe things they see on the internet, and I do that sometimes too, but it doesn't matter because you are spreading the truth. One must never equate sun signs with fixed star constellations, and Ptolemy was fully aware of precession. So when you hear Bill Nye say that Ptolemy created astrology, that is inaccurate, but Ptolemy definitely innovated that craft and modernized it so that we can take into account these delineations and apply them with Western calculations.
Which is how we also started really defining like the solstices and the equinoxes.
Exactly,
right? Yeah,
right.
okay.
Northern hemisphere,
Yeah.
right? But still, there's only 6 zodiac signs anyway, so that kind of makes over the whole north and southern hemisphere.
Well, then you take into consideration, because a lot of people hear, my sun is in this, or the sun is in Gemini, but like people don't think about where the earth is and how astronomy works.
Right, exactly.
And the actual shadow and like,
Right.
I mean, it's...
You're on Earth, guys. Remember that. So everything you're calculating is based on the Earth's revolution around the sun. That's why sidereal is already bullshit, because it's not based on the seasonal axis. It's based on the constellations, which is bullshit. It's not science.
So wait, so what would this make you then? So we were just talking about this. So then you would be a Taurus now.
With a Sag moon.
How do you know that? Oh, because it's back one sign?
You just take all of your planets and subtract 23 degrees, and that'll be your placement. Every point you have.
Okay, so it's going to be very similar then.
So if you have any planet that's over 23 degrees, it doesn't go back in the sign, basically.
So it's going to be the same pretty much as like Vedic for me then.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's 23
Well,
degrees?
sidereal, yeah.
Okay, sidereal, yeah.
Right.
So I'd be a Libra sun.
23
and a
though,
Pisces
it's
moon.
23. Pisces moon, okay. And like there's a way you can see it. You can see sidereal as like your soul self. And
29 degrees Pisces moon.
I'm
Fuck
29 degrees Sag moon. That's crazy.
I mean,
Oh shit.
you don't lie.
It is what it is.
I kind of like that though, because I think the nakshatra associated with 29 Pisces is like, is it Ravati, I think?
I think so.
It's like about being like kind of like tattooed and like super.
My nakshatra with Western was super accurate too.
You think so?
Oh yeah, with Western calculations, yeah.
Huh.
Super accurate. It's the asteroid of later success too, and it's super accurate because, and so like some people, and there's a truth to sidereal. The truth to sidereal is that Aries is not how Aries used to be. Aries is a lot more like Pisces now.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Taurus is a lot more like Aries, but that doesn't mean that Western is still not true. That applies outside the Earth's atmosphere, ladies and gentlemen. This is why Western calculations are so accurate.
And that's why also if you understand like the decans and like the planets that rule those particular degrees, whether you're applying like the Western to the Vedic nakshatras or you're looking at the planetary stuff, like that's why when I teach my beginner's astrology course, I always talk about the decans because I think it's really important to understand that there's like another layer there. I don't know.
There was an ascended goddess who told me, she gave me an explanation for how Western is accurate, but sidereal is still true, and that involved like intergalactic space aliens, like, you know, entrapping humans into this Western system. It's out there, and I'll be open-minded to it. I think it's rubbish, but then again, she's the ascended one, not me.
I feel like if anything, and it was interesting because a lot of these articles, I was looking at when the articles were coming out. A lot of these articles were coming out in like 2020 and 2021. coincidentally, when the South Node was in the late degrees of Sagittarius.
But they've also come out 2019, 2017.
Yeah.
Like, they recycle this bullshit every few years. They've been doing this for years.
Why, though? Just because they're just trying to, like...
Misinformation.
It's the same fucking bullshit as, like, how they're like, oh, Pluto's a planet. It's not a planet.
Right.
It's a Pluto... It's
Remember,
just...
these are coming from people who don't believe in astrology. So they're putting this information out to make you believe it less. But these people don't have 10,000 hours reading natal charts. And, like, there's actual experience. There's the Mars experiment to prove that there's a scientific basis to astrology that is consistent, calculable, okay? Actual science. We don't have to say it's a hard science, but it's a science. The sun faithfully every day travels 1 degree across the ecliptic. That already is the consistent, and I got that from the Leo King. Shout out to David. That is already the consistency that makes astrology science. And there's just so much like misinformation out that misleads genuine people. So stop thinking that your sign changed and learn some goddamn science.
I just think the weirdest thing about this also is that it has that connection, like the element is totally different. So like there were some people on YouTube that were straight up like, it's the element of the ethers. And I was like, how the fuck do you pull in a 5th element
First of all, that's
and give
Pisces.
it strictly to that?
That's Pisces, first of all. Pisces is the ether. That's the water ether sign. And January 1995, they've been doing this. BBC, it's an urban myth that keeps circulating so that they can have content to put out just to blast this out. But there's no scientific basis behind this outside of speculation and postulation.
I mean, it's almost as bad as like Taco Bell and McDonald's getting in on the bandwagon for astrology.
And tarot.
That was you, right? You sent me the thing about like Taco Bell doing the commercial
she's
about
a
astrology.
Libra. You probably like those because you're a Libra. And it's like, nice try, guys.
Didn't they say like, oh, you're indecisive, so you got 2 burritos?
Right.
I was like, that's what I do.
It's like they looked at the algorithm and they looked at what people are talking about in the community and they're marketing to that, which is genius. It's evil genius.
It is, but it isn't, because I feel like a lot of people who are into that stuff, for the most part, are definitely not eating McDonald's. They're not going to go and get McDonald's just to get a tarot reading.
They're probably vegan. So, like, the people talking like that are probably vegan. So, like, it's just a fail, but this is what it is. I mean, it's really fascinating. I like stuff like this because it forces well-meaning people to do fucking research and like actually learn what the zodiac is. A lot of people don't know what the zodiac is. A lot of people think the zodiac are signs. The zodiac is a belt. It's an imaginary space and axis that enables us to map the transit of the sun based on the Earth's equator that revolves around the sun.
And there's a planetary story too, similar to the tarot, how there's an evolution from the Fool to the World card.
Amen.
It's the same shit.
It is. But see, the problem is the people who are purporting these bullshit rumors cannot tell you that. They can't break down the science of that. So you have no business listening to them. They're peddling this placebo, this feeling. I feel like these placements. Nobody gives a fuck how you feel. Like, give the proof. Like, what's up? And I'm really serious about this because we work really hard to, like, help people guide their lives around this knowledge, only for people who don't do the work or research to just tell you bullshit and you eat it up. Okay, so don't necessarily, sun signs versus fixed star constellations is something you need to understand. And when we link this article, please make sure you read it. Ophiuchus is a constellation. It's not a zodiac sign.
I mean, even though you can find it within specific degrees, like you can go and find it, but it's going to be smack dab from the end of Scorpio into about mid-Sag.
So here's where you can blend it. You can look at the decan of Sag, and where the Ophiuchus constellation falls in the zodiac sign of Sag, that's going to be a special decan. That's a real thing. But to say it's a sign, you don't know what you're talking about.
Here it is. It says it's between... where did it just say?
Declination of 4.24 degrees. The snake bearer.
Yeah, but I just saw the actual specific. There was another thing that had the specific degrees. Where is it?
December, no.
Yeah, November 30th through December 17th. So it's literally going to be right around. Yeah, it's going to be right around the galactic center.
Probably like the second decan of like the second and last decan of Sag, basically.
Which, when you think about it, is ruled by Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then this is going to have that connection to Mars. So how are they going to say that it's ruled by Mars, but it's connected to the ethers? That makes no fucking sense to me.
And that's the thing, like when you ask people to explain it, they can't give you any explanation outside of postulation or rhetoric or
the snake is
conjecture.
associated with doctors. It's associated with healing images. The Romans associated it with the learned secret of immortality by watching one serpent treat another serpent healing herbs.
It's just a lot of mythology.
I mean, I get it, but like I've listened to some Babylonian astrology. I've never heard a Babylonian astrologer reference.
Ophiuchus.
Yeah, ever.
Because they're not fucking stupid.
Yeah, never.
Right.
What I do think is interesting is some people were like, oh, 13 is associated with Venus, so it's a placement that's associated
Which
with
is
like
not even
love.
true. Like if you ask anyone how Venus is associated with 13, they cannot tell you how. That's
In
made
ancient
up.
Hermetics, did you know that actually Gemini was associated with Venus, not
What?
Mercury?
Really?
Yeah. I
did
learned
not
that
know
recently.
that. That's
Yeah, that it's actually associated with Venus. That there's
Was
like
Mercury with Virgo? And then
I think so, yeah. Which is interesting because when you look at the tarot and you see the Lover's card and like that
Yeah.
association with Gemini, but in like ancient Hermeticism, there was a connection between Venus and Gemini.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I know air was like a water element too.
There's been so much stuff that's been like moved around.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you hear people who also want to talk about like the fixed stars and how the fixed stars have technically moved. There's some truth to that. They've moved what?
A couple
degrees.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually true. But that's still based on constellations. So like it can apply to the Western and people can understand that both can work.
It defeats the purpose of fixed stars though. Like especially
If it's
in like
fixed, yeah.
especially in like horary and stuff because there's so many fixed stars and like specific degrees and points that you have to know that I kind of feel like that would just screw everything up. That's why I mean, and no disrespect to like sidereal or like Vedic, because there's definitely a place for it. And like
yeah.
I keep going back to Vedic, and I have a Vedic practitioner because they're so specific with certain time periods and like dashas and things like that that you're just like, wow, you can't make this up. But like if you get into it and you start learning more, if you learn more about like annual perfections, if you learn about Time Lords, if you're also learning about like Fidaria, like you can apply those same techniques to Western astrology and you can practice the same thing that Vedic astrologers are doing for Western.
And houses stay the same. So Vedic or sidereal interpretations will seem accurate because the houses don't change. So half of the accuracy will kind of still be there, but it's all placebo. And this is why like I've done this for 10 years. Like you and I have based predictions on Western calculations that have come true to the T. I've seen you do that with the internet and say, okay, this is the time the internet will come back. And it did. So like if Western wasn't real, that would not happen. So like, you know, it's just common sense too, but it's because there's so much disinformation about what the zodiac is. People still think it's based on the constellation.
But visually and conceptually, if you're taking what was a 12-part chart, at least in Western, right? So if you're thinking about creating that, then what? So then it's going to turn into a chart that's going to have 13 slices, and you're going to have a very small sliver, which is going to be Scorpio. It just kind of mirrors and like falls into like this belief system that there's this back and forth about whether or not Pluto is something that's recognized as a planet.
So a constellation can be visibly seen. It is a grouping of stars that appear together in the sky. A sign communicates information, an astrological and astronomical
but if they
principles.
reorganize the degrees, right, to be able to include a 13th sign, and they gave Scorpio initially 6 degrees,
even to 362.
Right. So how the fuck do you make a circle like that? It's just a bigger circle, but it's such a small slice of the pie. I guess what I'm getting at is, and maybe it's just me who's just like going to be an advocate for Scorpio or Pluto energy. It would be no different if there was like a tiny slice for Sagittarius or for fucking Gemini or for Taurus. I'd be like, does that not create some sense of imbalance? Like, does
It
that
does.
not?
It really does.
And I feel like Scorpio is not the sign to do that, especially because that is about change and transformation and crisis and all that stuff.
It also is transformation into ascension. So when you look at it as Scorpio now coming outside of 3D and starting to spiral upwards, there is a wisdom to Ophiuchus that you have to be initiated into, but it's not conducive to share it in the 3D, because Ophiuchus into Sag is literally ascending your awareness into 5D, but it's not in the mechanics of astrology where you do natal interpretations.
I feel like it should just be chalked up to being like, this is the galactic center.
It is, right.
Because that's really what that is, right? It can be this black hole that can consume everything, whether it's good or bad, but it can also be that connection that you have to the universe and, you know, divine energy, whatever.
It's Kundalini energy too.
Yeah.
Ophiuchus represents the raising of the Kundalini, but really that's Scorpio and the Sag. And that's where we need to take it back to science. You know what I mean? Like we have the misinformation and we have like the rumors that are spread.
I just haven't seen enough people catch on. Like,
exactly.
I feel like if I start seeing like mainstream astrologers be like, "Hi, I'm going to write this horoscope for the 13th sign," I would be like,
it's trendy.
What the fuck is going on? But I have yet to see that. There's a couple people that will talk about it.
Every astrologer knows they are different from astrological zodiac signs, constellations. So the actual star constellations in the sky the actual star constellations in the sky are astrologically irrelevant. One must never equate sun signs with fixed star constellations. So when you hear Bill Nye say that astrology is bullshit because of the precession of the equinoxes, Bill Nye has never read a natal chart in his life. And when he was interviewed, he didn't even know the zodiac sign that came after Sagittarius. And this is the person telling you that astrology is bullshit. Just apply common sense, guys. Like, the dude doesn't know what he's talking about. So as an astronomer, he's giving you his insight, but he's not educated on the fact that constellations are not
fucking
suns.
fascinating.
And he's a Sagittarius.
Yeah, I was going to say, I pulled
so
up
he was
chart.
paid to do this. This is an ascended being. He's very intelligent. So like he was paid to say this. Like, you don't know that he's misleading y'all because he was paid to do that by now this. Okay, you're not getting off.
He's also got his Lilith and Venus in the 13th sign.
So
you guys know.
When I made that video debunking his claims, YouTube ghost deleted it. Didn't give me a word, didn't strike, they ghost deleted the video. And I didn't, if Andrew Schultz didn't mention a similar story, I would have thought it was just in my head. So like that's how pressing this information is, because I went in on him. I went in on all that. I debunked every single claim that he had. YouTube got tight. And then a YouTuber tried to debunk my video talking about, he said astrologer gets mad. It's planar walk. He said astrologer gets mad at Bill Nye because he says astrology isn't a science, which it isn't. This same dude, Scorpio, was talking about, I've never had a reading before. I've only seen newspaper horoscopes and didn't even realize.
That's the problem, is that armchair astrology and like people just know like really shitty like sun sign astrology. Like people don't realize how complex it is looking at a chart.
At all.
You know, and like all of the different dimensions, because we have the ascendant, we have the rest of the angles, we have all the other personal planets, not to mention if you get into asteroids and fixed stars and all that other stuff.
And there's documented research of French scientists wanting to replicate an experiment astrologers did to debunk it. They wanted to prove them wrong. It's just they recreated the Mars experiment. Look it up. And they proved it right. And they didn't know what to do with that. So they left it. Right. This is documented facts.
I mean, he has an interesting chart. We don't know the ascendant for Bill Nye, but the sun being at 4 of Sag, and then he's also
29 degrees Mars. Yeah. This dude, like I won't
blind faith much.
I won't really hate on Bill. Like Bill, I'm not gonna say Bill isn't intelligent. It's just he doesn't know about astrology, so I don't know why he's talking about that first. I don't talk about, you know what I'm saying, astrophysics. I don't know about astrophysics. And see, what we need in this community are astronomers to get together with astrologers, because we each have information the other needs. Astrologers are lacking astronomical information because we didn't go to school for that. Astronomers are not having the astrological wisdom. So it is what it is. And, you know, scientists like Neil Tyson deGrasse that point out bias, do a service to make you aware of this, but do a disservice by, making you think that astrology is bullshit, because that's only half true. So, it is what it is.
Interesting that he also has Saturn and Sag. So these are two people who have really prominent Sagittarian placements. And they both have Mercury conjunct the Sun within a couple of degrees.
Exactly. Which makes them very intelligent. I will say, though...
wow, look at that. He's got a Sun. He's got a Sun Kazemi.
They both have North Node on the Sun, too. They're very destined to do what they do. So the thing that will nip it in the bud, and this is what I said with the reaction video to whatever. If you want any of us to pull up live on your program and read your chart, we could just prove it right there. We'll just read your chart live.
That's my favorite thing to do.
Period.
I love that.
And then if you want to lie live that we didn't read you for filth, you can do that. We'll know that what we said about you was accurate, okay? And then Candace will be way more accurate than I am. So it is what it is. If anyone of you wants smoke, we won't have our audience. We'll have your hating ass audience trying to con us, and we'll still give you the truth.
I love people who are skeptics. I feel like everybody should be a skeptic.
I've turned a skeptic into a believer. He was a Virgo. He was like, oh, astrology is for the bitches. And then I read his chart, and he's like, he was a Homeland Security agent. And he's like, wow, for someone who doesn't know me at all, I just gave you my birthday and you told stuff about me that was accurate to my life. And once I made that Virgo a believer, I was like, I can do anything. Straight up.
And that's the cool thing about astrology is, like, I feel like I've always approached it in a sense of being like, okay, you don't believe, that's cool, I respect that. Give me 15 minutes of your time.
Right.
Not to pull a rabbit out of a hat, but
just give you science.
Just to really get in there and, like, try to, like, break things down. And it's less about future predicting. It's more about trying to get people to understand that we are not born with a roadmap. Like, we don't know why we're here. We don't know why we came here. We don't know what the glory plan is, where we come from. But I feel like the stars and the planets and the alignment that we were born with is this cosmic language that all of our souls speak, and really kind of shows the glory plan, and that there was some predetermination prior to incarnation. And that's what I think is so cool about it. That you see some people's charts and you're like, man, you really came here on a mission.
I love every time I do Chiron filled charts and they're in nursing, EMT, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. But see, this isn't a regulated field. So like
not yet.
Right. So the whole influence of bias and misunderstanding is normal, because you have to have a bar exam to be a lawyer. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no exam to be an astrologer. So anyone can say whatever the fuck they want.
You go through certifications and you go through programs, and certainly there's something
to be said.
But
they're not acknowledged or accredited. So
no, but I mean, there's something to be said when you have significant, like, philosophers and psychologists and doctors and therapists.
Like Mr. Koch right here doing the fucking Lord's work and telling the truth.
He's got like a master's, I think, in Greek and philosophy and something else. And he's also been a coder for many years. I feel like he's done that for so long.
And Glenn Perry, who's a PhD in psychology, teaching astropsychology. Like, these are the pioneers of our field.
Who's the guy that's just Richard Tarnas, who just got done doing Cosmos and the whole series?
God bless y'all, by the way. We need y'all to push this forward. Like, thank you for existing.
Well, I think it's interesting that whole show talked about just like the cycles of, as people would undergo some kind of treatment working with psychedelics, that under certain alignments, certain Pluto, Uranus, Saturn alignments, that they were able to really go deep into some of that healing work. I mean, there's something to be said about that.
And it's still just such a huge field that's yet to be explored, that I feel Neptune coming out of Pisces will clear us out of that fog and help us understand more of this in the mainstream.
Well, there's a new cycle starting soon in a couple of years. When we've talked about this, when Neptune and Saturn ingress, one will retrograde and then they ingress together into Aries.
And Pluto will be in Aquarius, so.
That's going to be an interesting time, especially like when you think about, it's kind of mirroring now when we have planets in Aquarius. We have Saturn in Aquarius, we have Jupiter going into Aries and Mars in Aries. I think it's going to be the start of something new, but it starts with individuals breaking down the limitations that they have had against spirituality, other people, their belief systems. I think we're going to get back into people starting to kind of ritualize and like do work with their own particular belief systems or deities, or people who are going to start embodying them.
And people are going to shift from being aware of their sun sign to knowing their sun sign. You know what I mean? Like a lot of this will just shift so much more understanding and practical utilization of this, because the biggest issue with astrology is that it's seen as some kind of spiritual belief. Astrology is a language. You don't believe in Spanish, you speak it, and if you can't speak it, you don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, learn the language and you'll be fine. But once you approach it scientifically and experimentally, it starts to gain more bearing. And this is where a lot of people think, like, we can be spiritual, but a lot of what we do is science. It's based on calculations.
Well, and geometry and psychology and philosophy and mythology and theology and
absolutely.
All the ologies.
Straight up. There's an art form, there's a science, there's a language. So, you know, I'm grateful we can be on the forefront to help push this.
And merge also a number of like different practices,
beliefs.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Indians and the Vedic who really innovated that powerfully with their sidereal system. We're innovating it with Western. So it's amazing how we're able to play our part. But it's also our responsibility to nip in the bud all these like lies and myths around all of this.
You know, Jupiter, next year, 2023, we're going to see Jupiter's ingress into Taurus, which will be interesting as it comes into conjunction with Uranus. And I think we're going to see
a boost
physical proof that astrology works. Physical proof. Physical planning, building, financial, you know, investing, everything revolving around astrology.
Because there's already proof, but it's going to be more unveiled.
Yeah. Well, there's a war on astrology right now. There's a huge war on astrology with Saturn square Uranus.
Candace says something that's very true. We may see it outlawed when Pluto goes in Aquarius, you know what I mean? So
try to come for me, motherfuckers. I bet they are going to try to do some crazy shit where they're going to try to have some like crazy hoops you have to jump through to become certified. And yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for that because part of me is like, whatever, fuck it. I like bring it on. Like I already have a degree, so I'm kind of like waiting to see what happens. But by the same token, what if that's the beginning of like paving the way to be like, okay, once there is some certification, these may be people who are actually helping organize and structure how we're teaching it. Because I'm like really all about the future of astrology and how we're going to use it. Are we going to bring it into society in a way that's going to be useful, like teaching it to counselors or integrating it into therapy or integrating it into medicine? Because there's so many different ways that astrology can be used. And I just keep thinking about the future of how we can use it and the power of being able to help inspire other people and help them build the life that they want.
And really just, you know, navigate greater ways to communicate. Because this should be taught to the children. Like grade school, elementary kids should know their sign. They should know what the house is.
Or at least know part of what their destined plan is. Like I keep going back to like the power of knowing that a kid is almost predestined to being able to excel in one area.
Seriously.
You know? So it's like, are you really going to push your kid to go to medical school and you know that they could be the next Michael Jordan? Can we avoid certain pitfalls in parenting or kids who might have issues with addiction or other things by being able to like positively apply some of this knowledge?
Seriously. And, you know, it's just a disservice how we kind of block this knowledge to the people who most need it because of just ignorance and, once again, disinformation. But the shadow behind it is the war against it. That if you watch The Age of Deception by Leo King, you'll see how astrology was hand in hand with religion and it slowly got phased out because of how empowering it is.
Where do you think some of the holidays came from? Especially in like paganism and how a lot of that was...
The whole Bible was written off of astrology, but people won't admit that. So, you know, it is what it is. And the astrology isn't something that needs to be proven. You're going to get it now or you will get it later.
Yeah, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, I wonder what's going to happen.
Your kids will know their sign. Like it is what it is, whether you want to believe it or not. And it's just so key because, you know, a lot of the culture that waves in, I think we'll get a lot of toxicity, you know, as far as like bullshit around the signs, which is why we need more case studies. We need more actual research done into debunking myths about.
I think you're going to see. I mean, it's happened intermittently throughout history. We have seen periods of time where astrologers and like occultists and people who practice, alchemy and like other metaphysical like practices had to go underground.
Yeah,
it happened. It didn't really start to come back until like the Renaissance. So it's like. There may be a period where this is outlawed for a little bit, especially as I think of like the Pluto square Pluto transits that are going to happen.
Especially the Pluto Scorpio, bridging that wisdom into knowledge.
Yeah.
So, I accept all challenges. It's a growth mechanism, but as far as the 13th zodiac sign, you have to understand the fundamentals of why it's 12 and just rid yourself of these theories that are not backed up with any facts. It's just kind of hurting the progress that we make.
And let us know how does this change your chart? Do you believe in it? Do you resonate with the change? Or do you not? Let us know why. And which side of the discussion do you kind of like land on? Do you see where possibly there can be some truth to it? Should we be acknowledging it? Are you like a fuck no, like we are?
Because there is an argument you can make to where, we shouldn't base it off the signs. It should be the constellations. But can you back that up with any proof, with any facts? You know what I mean? Like a lot of it is placebo. It's just how you feel. So.
And even if some of the constellations have shifted and they have moved, at least I can only speak for myself, somebody who's been so engrossed in Western astrology, to then hear Vedic and go, no. I mean, there's similarities, but no, like Western,
right.
Especially if you just, I don't know. If you've studied your chart to that extent and you really resonate with it, it makes sense. So
there's one thing Neil said, that you can know something enough to think that you know it, but do you know something enough to know that you don't know it? And that applies to sidereal, and that's why I want to take his course, because it definitely helped more what I do. But, thankfully I've studied what we've studied so long to know there's results, there's proof, there's experiments, there's testimonials. So it's easy for us to understand. We do this. A lot of people who are purporting this don't have 10,000 hours. I'm sorry, they don't. So they don't know what they're talking about. So. Don't take our word for it. Please research the links we share, do your own research, and share your thoughts below, and make sure you join level 3 because that's tarot. So.
We'll pin these articles so you guys can take a look at it. Let us know what you think. Leave us comments. Also, are there any other topics that you guys would like us to make videos about? We made this episode specifically because it's been brought up so many times. So if you have any other ideas for content ideas or topics that you'd like us to do, please let us know below. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We will see all of you very soon. Take care.
Peace.